Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, the most infamous of all Caribbean pirates. But what about the Teach of Fate Grand Order? How well does he compare to his historical counterpart, and what grade would I give his depiction? Let's do this. Blackbeard is a rider class servant, which, based on already established criteria, is the best choice for him. Rider class servants have come to include any servant who makes use of some kind of steed or vehicle, whether that be horses, ships, or just to run people over with a sports car. Since Teach is probably the most famous pirate captain ever, he obviously qualifies for the rider class. Moving on to his character design, Blackbeard's design is a bit of an acquired taste for me. In his first two ascensions, he goes shirtless aside from some weird shoulder pads and some jewelry he is wearing, or should I call that booty? It isn't a look that I've ever seen from any incarnation of Blackbeard, which usually has him in a more proper Navy-type uniform and very heavily armed. I mean, some pirates did go shirtless at times, but I guess I wish he had the coat. Thankfully he gets that coat in his third ascension, though it is still open. I guess this is a creative decision that I'm just feeling nitpicky about. But there is one little detail in Teach's design that I'm very glad they included. If you take a close look at Blackbeard's hair, you will notice amidst his black hair a few white ones, which also seem to be on fire at their tips. One of the most infamous things about Blackbeard is that he would put candles or slow-burning fuses into his hair and set them alight, making it seem like his hair was smoking or on fire. This was an intimidation tactic to make Teach look fearsome to others, and it worked. It is one of the major reasons we still remember his name today. Also, with a fairly recent release of Summer 6, he got a new summer costume which I quite like. As a whole, while he doesn't quite fit with my personal image of how Blackbeard should look, it still works. Getting into Teach's skill set, his first skill is Voyager of the Storm, which increases MP strength and attack for all allies for one turn. We've seen this skill before on Captain Nemo. It is a generic skill meant to represent one's ability to handle a ship. Obviously this is a good fit for Blackbeard. I don't need to say any more about this. Blackbeard's second skill is Pirate's Glory, which gives him an attack buff, but also decreases his debuff resistance for 3 turns. But much more notably, this skill also gives Teach a Guts, with no time limit. Now, this skill is supposed to be a generic sounding skill that is meant to represent pirate virtues, the values that the Golden Age pirates held in great esteem. Despite the bland name, only Blackbeard and Summer, Ann, and Mary actually have this skill. Blackbeard having a Guts skill with no time limit, though, is actually incredibly fitting. Edward Teach's last stand has been immortalized in legend, since it was said that he took an insane amount of punishment to actually bring down, being shot 5 times and cut 20 more. Regardless of the generic sounding name, I give this a thumbs up for the Guts skill. I'd have probably liked a defense buff too, but this is fine. Teach's third skill is Gentlemanly Love, which heals all allies except himself, and gives additional healing to any female allies. Now, there is absolutely nothing said about this skill, not in Blackbeard's profile or in released FGO materials, and he is the only character who has this skill. However, the real Blackbeard was rumored to have had as many as 14 wives during his life, though only one, Mary Ormond, was made official. So, at the very least, you could say that Teach had a fair bit of interest in the opposite sex. Whether or not he was a good gentleman to his pirate crew, however, is a very different matter. There are stories about him wounding or killing members of his crew, and that one of his crewmates helped bring him down. But I'll go ahead and say this skill is fine. Blackbeard's noble phantasm is Queen Anne's Revenge, launching a massive cannon barrage from his ship towards all the enemies, getting 10 critical stars as a bonus, and even a chance to lower enemy MP gauges by 1 depending upon overcharge. Now, I have to give the designers this one. This MP is excellent from a lore perspective. Queen Anne's Revenge was Blackbeard's most famous ship, formerly a French slave ship that Teach had captured. He equipped the ship with 40 guns and a crew of 300. Pirates tended to use small sloops or brigs since they were easier to acquire and easier to handle on the high seas. The 40-gun Queen Anne's Revenge, on the other hand, is closer to a proper warship of the era. In the faraway Caribbean, a ship with the firepower of Queen Anne's Revenge was deadly. However, that came at the cost of the ship being slower and needing that much larger crew. Blackbeard would actually run the ship aground on purpose in order to reallocate the crew to the other ships in his fleet. The wreck of Queen Anne's Revenge would be discovered off the coast of North Carolina in 1996. One final note to make, the fact that this MP has a chance to reduce enemy MP charges might be something too. I mean, the suppression value of so many guns being fired at you is likely to be significant. And since the real Blackbeard put so much effort into weakening enemies' ability to resist by using fear and intimidation, this might actually be a pretty clever way to depict that. Suffice to say, this is an excellent MP for Blackbeard. Teach's craft essence is Glory of Past Days, depicting a ship in a bottle upon a desk and other treasures as Blackbeard walks out of the room. As the name implies, this CE seems to be a memorial to Teach's days on the high seas, now largely over since he has become a servant. The CE's text reads more like a speech than anything else, something Blackbeard could have very well said to inspire his crew to live as they liked, since, being pirates, they knew that they would meet a bloody end someday, as most of them did. In terms of this being specific to Teach, not really. Still, the pirate sentiment is there, and we already got his ship as an MP, so I guess this will do. Now we get to the fun part, characterization. Blackbeard's first appearance, and his only appearance in the main story, is in the Okeanos Singularity, where he serves as one of the main villains. Look, I'm gonna be honest here, I hate this depiction. The Blackbeard we get in Okeanos speaks like an internet creature, actually saying lol in his dialogue, and acts like a massive creep, particularly towards Ephraile. Now, we have already established that Teach, shall we say, really got around when it came to relationships. But the way he is in Okeanos? We've seen this character before. I grew up watching shows like Dragon Ball. I remember Master Roshi and all of his antics, though that was balanced out by the moments that he got to kick ass and be a proper mentor. The Blackbeard of Okeanos doesn't really have that. He's just a creepy pervert that nobody likes, not even his own crew. However, if there is one thing about the Fate franchise I do appreciate, it is that they seem to know when they have made a massive storytelling mistake, and Blackbeard's later depictions would be much more tolerable. The turning point for me where Blackbeard went from a character I utterly hated to someone I could tolerate was in Summer 3, which was one of my very first events in FGO. Here, Blackbeard morphs into more of an anime otaku rather than just a gross pervert. And since the Summer 3 event revolves around a competition between which group can create the best dojin, Teach actually proves to be fairly helpful here thanks to his knowledge. It allowed the character to redeem himself in my eyes, a bit. Further event appearances, most recently during Summer 6, have similarly helped him out. The writers have cut away the creepier aspects of his depiction in Okeanos, which implied that Teach was some kind of pedo. Now he has become that quirky teammate who you know is a bit eccentric, but can prove to be reliable from time to time. It is a marked improvement in his characterization. But is there more going on here? Is Blackbeard more than a joke character? Since I've hinted at my opinion of Blackbeard's characterization in previous videos, a number of videos have left comments suggesting that there may be more to him than meets the eye. And as it turns out, there just might be, even as far back as Okeanos. You see, Teach was acting really gross, but there was one notable part of the story there that hinted that he might have been doing it as an act. When you have your final battle with Blackbeard, Hector ends up betraying him to steal his holy grail, delivering it to the true villain of the story, Jason. However, Hector and Blackbeard's exchange here makes it clear that Teach, for all of his creepy idiocy, was actually extremely wary around Hector. And the only reason Hector was able to pull off his sneak attack is because Teach was finally cornered by Drake and Chaldea. In other words, Blackbeard might have been acting like a gross idiot, but he wasn't completely blind to what was going on. The interpretation I have seen, using this scene as evidence, is that Blackbeard is deliberately playing up his weirdness as an act, as a way to ward off potential trouble. Since the real Blackbeard did play up a fearsome reputation, such as that whole bit with making it look like his hair was on fire, to try to persuade ships he preyed upon to surrender without a fight, this got my attention. The idea is that Edward Teach, now finding himself in Chaldea surrounded by people like King Arthur, Gilgamesh, or Heracles, can't rely upon a fearsome reputation to get what he wants, that he's up against real legends now, not nervous sailors or merchantmen. But on the other hand, since the power that servants wield is influenced by the fame of the legends surrounding them, couldn't you argue that Blackbeard should be much stronger than he is? Blackbeard is arguably the most famous pirate to ever live, which is actually kind of funny because, as a pirate, Teach's career didn't even last 2 years, and he wasn't the most successful pirate either. The character who is, we will get to soon enough. It was his reputation that gave him power, and that his story kept being told right up to the present day. So while you could argue that Blackbeard is just trying to create a new reputation to serve his purposes, I would argue that his reputation, and how reputation influences the strength of servants, should make him more dangerous than he is depicted. Perhaps someday we might get another servant not named Edward Teach, but Blackbeard, and to have that one be the fearsome pirate he is remembered as. And now for the verdict. What grade would I give Blackbeard's depiction in Fate Grand Order? Well, it's a mixed bag. While it might not fit my personal tastes, his character design works just fine for the character, and his skill set and MP are absolutely solid from a lore perspective. It is when we get into characterization that, well, there are problems. If you look over Teach's in-game profile, it is quite clear that the developers know who Blackbeard is. They deliberately made the choice to depict him as a creep in Okeanos, and later as a more fun character in summer events. You could make the argument that he's just trying to use his reputation in a different way, since Teach knows that fear isn't likely to work against servants who have literally fought against gods. At the same time, if he is truly just pretending to be a fool, I wish that was made a little more obvious. I didn't talk about it in characterization, but a great place that could have happened would have been his interlude. But instead, we just go to some kind of pirate convention to get some naughty art book featuring Francis Drake. Reviewing that scene between Teach and Hector in Okeanos did help, but I think we need more scenes like that, hints that Blackbeard is much smarter than he acts, to really repair his reputation. And so for a final grade, I'm going to give Edward Teach, the legendary pirate Blackbeard, a D+. When I first started making these videos and giving servants grades for their depiction, I fully expected that Blackbeard would be my first F, and so be the one to debut my gimmick of doing a crazy laugh and setting him on fire. Instead, not only did that honor go to Mephistopheles instead, this isn't happening to Teach at all. It is the strength of his kit, and the possibility that he might just be adopting a new kind of reputation, that saves him from the flame. The thing is, with the kit that Blackbeard has, if he actually did demonstrate he can still be the fearsome pirate of legend, his grade would go up like a rocket, probably into the B's. In conclusion, I guess you could say that Blackbeard in Fate Grand Order is an unpolished gem. A little more work and he could potentially shine. If you would like to learn more about another character who has developed a sinister reputation, check out my video on James Moriarty here. Until next time.